and probably between these reverberations, you can't hear me either. Under these circumstances, I think I'll take to heart the fact that the program indicates only that I'll participate. So I shan't be solemn, nor shall I take much time. I do appreciate this chance, however, to make a few important points. I want to make it very clear today that it is indeed Larry Powell who is retiring. I am not retiring. I make a particular point of this because recently when I sat down to lunch at the Faculty Center with 6 old and trusted friends on the faculty, one of them immediately said, "Bob, congratulations on your Guggenheim Fellowship." The following weekend, as I walked through the shopping center near my home, a young UCLA student and his family waved me to a halt with, "Dr. Powell, it's nice to see you." Just a year ago, when all of the librarians in the country were meeting in Detroit, all of whom I thought I knew, Larry Powell gave the introductory speech. Thereafter, at a reception, as I stood in line, a tremulous little lady said, "Dr. Powell, I always love to hear you speak." Now, this has been going on long enough. So my first point is, it is Larry who is retiring, not I. Secondly, since some of you 5 years ago attended Larry's retirement, let me assure you that, like Schumann-Heink, there is finally a last public retirement. Larry is through retiring at this point. Thirdly, I have been asked to explain why Larry is retiring. We've all wondered. He has his own opinion. He thinks he's retiring because he has a genius for writing. I know he's retiring because he has a genius for timing. And a sense of timing is a true touch of genius. How did Larry know that in his last year as university librarian, the growth of the library budget would be at its highest peak? I didn't know, but somehow he knew. So, all I can say today to my good friend, incoming Dean Horn, watch out next year. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to recognize a few among the many very special friends who are here or who have been here today. This morning, those of you who were present were able to say hello to Mrs. Edward A. Dixon, whose husband first saw the need for the library school here at UCLA. I want now particularly to recognize President and Mrs. Robert Gordon Sproul, who are hiding somewhere in the book stacks. The Sprouls were here some years ago on another occasion when the red carpet was laid out in front of this building and a party was held in honor of an art collection on campus. So I'm very pleased that they would come back today to their favorite dining hall. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Chancellor Murphy, who himself has a number of close interests in libraries. One of the first library tasks I remember was at Berkeley, where I was concerned with retrieving books that had been stored under the bleachers in the stadium. Now, as all of you know, all this last year, the Chancellor has fought and bled to provide me with a stadium so that I could store books under the bleachers. More than one person this morning stole my final line by saying that Larry Powell is by no means a retiring sort of fellow. Neither is Franklin Murphy. Mr. Chancellor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to try an experiment. If you can't hear me, yell, and then I'll go back to this infernal machine. Do you hear me in the far corner? Thank you. Experiment doesn't work. I must first of all say that I'm delighted to be here today for all of the reasons that bring you, and perhaps one additional. Although the Irish are presumed to be a vocal people, there are limitations even to their talents of description and communication. I have been participating in a series of retirements for Larry Powell for about 4 years. I have described him in all of the ways that my limited prose has permitted. And I am not a Joyce, but a Murphy. I gather that this is at least the last public occasion on which I shall have to put together my reactions to the several facets of his character and contribution. Now, I've been told that today, during the day, and even to now, sentimentality has been happily absent, or at least saccharine sentimentality. And this, of course, is quite wrong in the context of any retirement. So I think that my contribution must be at the sentimental level. And very briefly, I shall proceed to deal with that appropriately. In the first place, you have had a variety of panegyrics entirely justified, delivered to you both directly and indirectly today about Larry. They're justified, obviously, by the stature of the man, albeit, if not his physical, other aspects of his stature. But this afternoon, I'd like to quote one of his favorite essayists and say that now that the tides of passion have rolled out and left bare the sands of truth, I can tell you the unvarnished truth about Larry Powell. You say he is a bookman, and I guess he has been that. You say he is an author, and we have some evidence of that in the checklist. I tell you, he is nothing more nor less than an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur of the most calloused, if not callow type. Our dear friend Bob Sproul is here today as witness. I know that Bob is an educated and well-read man, but before Larry got through with him, Bob had an absolute passion for the Victorian novel. And so Michael Sadler came with Bob Sproul, believing that this was indeed the one part of literary history that was unique in human terms. I guess 10 or 15 years ago, someone once mentioned in my presence the name of Eric Gill. I promptly proceeded to forget the name. I can assure you that I am now the world's greatest expert on Eric Gill. And I have a passion for Eric Gill unmatched. I still don't know much about him, but I do know that the Clark Library has an unparalleled collection of Eric Gill, and I know that somehow my pockets were picked to get it there. This quiet, sensitive, bookish man is, I will tell you, one of the world's greatest bibliographic pickpockets. And happily, we have evidence here at UCLA to prove it beyond peradventure. I ask myself today, why all of this interest in Larry and his retirement? He's clearly transferred his buying power to an even greater entrepreneur, Mr. Vosper. I've had longer years of trying to avoid Bob Vosper than I have had even avoiding Larry Powell. And I can assure you that to move from Powell to Vosper is a guarantee of threadbare clothing at the very least. Happily, great libraries in the process. But surely those who are in the business of finding and selling books no longer can find in Larry the kind of resource that he once presented. Why would they come and spend a day with what is something less than gourmet food? Now, there should be no one here who has an interest in getting their child into the School of Library Science, for he has transferred that responsibility and whatever influence he had in that regard. So those of you who are here and who have children who have aspirations to go into this field clearly are not here because of his influence in that regard. Possibly some of you are here to be sure that he retains his good health. As many of you know, one of his most notable bits of reputation is that of being one of the greatest eulogists at funerals in the state of California. Ever a distinguished person dies and thinks of it ahead of time, they always ask that Larry be asked to come and make the statement. And some of you old-timers around, I suspect, are hoping that his health keeps up so that he can do that for you. My own conviction is, however, that most of you are here, as I, to take note of the fact that Larry has been all of the things that everybody has described him as being, and withal a great and warm and wonderful human being. But I think that there's perhaps, on the part of nearly everyone here, the subconscious or perhaps conscious realization that he represents something very precious that we all have in common. But he represents it and has lived it in such a visible and meaningful way that we like to associate ourselves with this notion by associating ourselves with him, and particularly at moments of importance in his life. The notion he himself stated in the preface to the little package published in 1964. He said, "In a new era of electronics and automation, mine is an old-fashioned voice, speaking time and again of books, new and old, and of the magic they work for those who take them in hand and who read them." He has taken them in hand, he has read them, and in the process, he has communicated their magic to all of us here present and thousands of others as well. This, I would suggest, is the greatest tribute we can pay him or any other cultivated man. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the timing today has been phenomenal. The speeches ended at 12. The drinking ended at 10 to 1. These speeches started at 2, were to be finished by 2:30. We're ahead of schedule. The meeting is over. Thank you so much for joining.